Okay, so you know why I'm here. I'm in the company of my mom, Mrs. Camay Calloway Murphy, and I wanted to ask you about the house in Baltimore, 2216 Druid Hill Avenue. They just found out this was definitely your father's house from, I don't have the exact dates on me, I think it's 1918 through 1921. At the least, it may be longer than that, but I guess it may. Anyway, did you know about that?
Not really, but I knew that that he was first living in the Calloway, his father's grandmother's house, Grandma Calloway and Granddad Calloway. He was living with them when they came back from Rochester. And then I think at some point, and I think that was about 1017 or something, Drew Hill.
Yep, that's right.
And
that's
then at some point they moved in with his mother's mother and his grandmother Reed, and I did not know what that specific house number was, but it's been researched and found out that yes, he did live there during his formative teen years, and then they moved into the Morgan Park area, Wilson Park area.
Which do you know anything about Wilson Park? What kind of area that was?
I think it was an area that was developed by a realtor who evidently had some connection to the Calloway family. I don't know what his
his father
connection
was in real estate.
Yeah, his father was in real estate. So Wilson evidently developed this area out by Morgan College, and it was the up and coming area, sort of like Columbia is to Baltimore, and so people migrated out there if they had the money and if they had the wherewithal, because most of them were teachers or doctors or lawyers who worked in Baltimore, so you had to commute from Wilson Park into
the center of the
city.
The center of the city. Wow. And was North Avenue always kind of crowded and stuff like it is now? Was it always a place where people congregated and kind of met in like a central? It's like a transportation hub now. Did it always have activity in there along Pennsylvania Avenue?
I think Pennsylvania Avenue was more the black area, and North Avenue was kind of like a boundary line, and above North Avenue, primarily those were the homes of whites who worked in Baltimore, lived in Baltimore, or owned businesses or whatnot in Baltimore, but had like summer homes above North Avenue, because it was kind of rural. It was wasn't an urban populated area like Baltimore. It was more countryish, like where I am now in Havre de Grace.
Yeah, we're in Havre de Grace, Maryland right now, at the home of Mrs. Camay Calloway Murphy. And you were saying that given that we found this house just recently, and now it's been confirmed that you found out about it, I mean, how does that make you feel of what significance is that?
Well, I feel very elated. if in fact this house is preserved and the legacy of my father, who made a great impact on the cultural life of America, if he can be venerated in some way through the park, through the house, you know, whatever, in Baltimore, I think it's very satisfying to me, and it's something that probably should have been done much earlier, but now that we are
we got mosquitoes out here, y'all.
now that we are, you know, you've made the discovery, then you know, the question is what to do with the discovery.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people involved, I mean, you know, in deciding that. And so you representing the family as the matriarch, as the family, as the person who knew Cab Calloway the best, I mean, what do you think? What's your opinion on what you would like to see in terms of design or thinking about
it? Yeah. Well, you know, you have to. I feel as though you have to really make some connection between today and yesterday. You can't have it all in the past, but you have to really show how his influence and his energy and his vision of music and what it should be and how it should progress, you know, needs to be explained, known, and I think that through this project that could be done. But it's you know, it takes some doing. It takes a lot of people with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of determination to do something of this kind.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who have made impacts that have come out of Baltimore that are practically forgotten.
Yeah, that are extraordinary. Yeah.
Yes, because there hasn't been any visible, viable thing that that they say, oh, this is the Cab Calloway house, or this is the Cab Calloway park, or this is the U.B. Blake house, or this is where Billie Holiday did blah, or you know, there's just not that.
Those kind of reminders. And
reminders.
And stuff, like you find in a place like Gettysburg.
Yeah, they're not those reminders in Baltimore that I'm aware of.
And so you were there when they tore down the Royal Theater, and what was that like?
Yes, that was. Well, people just didn't know what was going on. They didn't know that there was a. It was sort of. It was like taking the Colts out of Baltimore out to Cleveland or wherever, but they just didn't know what was going on. So the next thing they knew, the Royal Theater was gone.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and everybody drove by it then because nobody could believe it. I remember we would take Pennsylvania Avenue and you would drive by and be like, I just can't believe it. Yeah.
And
but what significance was the Royal Theater? Why would you save the Royal Theater?
Well, it was a hub. It was where people went to hear the local music. Plus, it represented a kind of a step up for blacks in Baltimore.
Yeah.
For the black population in Baltimore. It was a lovely theater. It was classy. It was the shows were very well done.
You felt safe?
There were good costumes and there was humor. There was, you know, And it was a place where you could take your dates and things like that, and you know it was a good hub for African Americans in Baltimore. But with stage shows,
Kind of like the
plus
Forum.
it was sort of part of the what they call the Chitlin Circuit.
Yeah.
You know,
Now,
it
what
was
is
on
the
that.
Chitlin Circuit? People
Yeah,
talk about.
that was various theaters in Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore that had predominantly African American shows and African American performers, and and they, I guess they call it Chitlin Circuit because whenever black performers would come in town, they'd want some chitlin, and they were at these so it sort of identified them as sort of coming from the South and having to eat whatever was ever left over and whatnot, and doing it in such a way that it was very attractive and tastes good, and so that's what we seem to have to do. We're sort of left with the scraps, and then you gotta use your imagination and your vision to then bring it up a notch.
Just like this house. And in terms of the Chitlin Circuit, would it be fair to say that your father was a part of the Chitlin Circuit?
Oh yeah, he was definitely a part of the Chitlin Circuit.
And who else was a part of it?
Mom's Mabley,
comedian.
Tap dancers, a lot of dancers, Nicholas Brothers,
and there's so many other really good
Cole,
dancers.
So all of that was
Count Basie with Duke Ellington.
Duke Ellington was on the Chitlin Circuit. I don't know that he played Baltimore that much, but I know he was. He played Philadelphia a lot, and he played.
But Cab loved to come to Baltimore. I mean,
he loved to come to Baltimore
and visit
to
his
eat.
family. And visit his family.
He loved crabs, and my grandmother could fix crabs in multiple forms, and so he really enjoyed coming there to eat, and the food in Baltimore was much better than food in New York.
Nice. And do you have other stories of things he would do when he got to Baltimore? I mean, who else in his family lived in Baltimore? There was Blanche Calloway.
Blanche lived in Baltimore, but Blanche left Baltimore before he did. And then there was Bernice, his sister, who was here, and then he had a stepsister in Philadelphia, Camilla, and then he had friends in Baltimore because he went to school at Douglas, so he had a lot of friends who were, were teaching or doing, or were doctors, or were professional people, and would come to the show and to see him, and
can't get it.
so he enjoyed coming to Baltimore.
And would it be safe to say then that the people he sang about, Smokey Joe, Minnie the Moocher, and the Reefer Man, were people he was probably introduced to at Druid Hill Avenue as opposed to Wilson Park? Is it fair for me to say that?
I guess so. I guess. Yeah, he was kind of a storyteller, and a lot of his music told these little stories.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be a good analysis of some of those songs.
Right.
However, that's something else that would need to be
Vetted out.
Yeah.
And really given some time to reflect on.
To reflect on.
Is oh gosh, well, I would say, because the people from those places are really, still there. You can still find a Smokey Joe and a Minnie the Moocher, in those places, and so I think they, may have informed them a great deal. His music is also like about groups of people, you know what I mean? It's almost, I always imagine him like he's testifying in a barbershop or someplace amongst men. Folks, here's the story about Minnie the Moocher. Folks, I'm going down to St. James Infirmary. There's a lot of storytelling and sort of documenting what the black experience was like. Is that fair to say?
I would say that, yes, definitely. And that's the very strong cultural aspect to this, because he sort of opened up a door that was closed, and in the thing that we did for American Masters, I forget what the man's name is, but he's a very well-known writer, and so he said that white people always felt that there was some secret or something about black people that they just didn't know, they just didn't understand, they really didn't know them. And so he opened the door to sort of
that
black
mystery.
life, mystery,
right,
and black
right.
life in an urban center, and how people conquered it or lived with it, or what they did with it, and how they survived. Because for African Americans, it's always been a case of survival.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
And even though he sang blues really well and all that, his message, though, seemed to be a lot more uplifting. It seemed to contrast from the blues.
Well, in the song, he says Minnie was a moocher, but she had a heart as big as a whale. And that says something about the race in general.
Yeah, that's true.
That we may have to be on relief and do other kinds of things, but when it comes to our families and whatnot, there's a
generosity
and giving out.
All right, and then I guess last question. I don't know. Can you wrap it up? I keep getting distracted by these mosquitoes.
Well, it appears to me that community and government and private industry and should really get together and talk about some of these cultural giants who've made great impressions. Made a continual impression on American life, and have done classic things that have held on over the years, like Minnie the Moocher is still, alive and still sung and still used as a means of getting people entertained and involved. So that I think that there needs to be some sort of talking a lot of this out and seeing what can be done and how it can be something both modern for today's young people who are very technically high tech and so that it can be something attractive for them, and yet it can be something satisfying and reminiscent
Right.
to people
Because-
like myself.
Because ultimately, I mean, it is about the children and letting them know that, you know, they can come from that neighborhood and make it. And, you know, it's a source of inspiration and education. I think that would be really important to him, is
Yeah.
to try to help people. I mean, he spent his whole life trying to help people's lives and help people feel better and stuff like that.
Right.
Oh, last question. All right. Talk about his relationship with the with people from who were Jews, because that's also kind of special. I mean, the music was accessible to them, and they enjoyed it a great deal. They were his most among his
Yeah.
most loyal fans,
Right,
up
right.
until the end.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Why that's a unique phenomenon. It's not, I guess, other than Sammy Davis Jr. You know, I can't think of another African American musician whose artistic contribution was so heavily influenced by Jews. You know, there may be others, but you know, there seemed to be this
Well,
strong relationship. The
well,
Gershwins and Fleischer and
for some reason or the other, Jewish people seem to have been on the ground floor in terms of the music industry. And so many of them were songwriters, many of them were managers of various groups, and many of them were just appreciative of the music. It just appealed to them, and so they supported it.
yeah,
That is one of the things that it seems to me that the Jewish community has done over the years, that when there is something important to them and they really like it, they support it. They put their money into it. They put their time. They put their effort into it.
And they're very faithful and loyal. And yeah,
Right. So I think that really helped him.
Yeah.
And he had a natural voice for cantoring.
Right.
And he had cantored in some of the synagogues.
Wow.
And
as in Baltimore, or
I think in Baltimore.
Wow.
And
wow.
you know, to pick up a few dollars, and so he sort of held on to that, and
I'm
and
sure.
kept himself sort of on the edge of, but really part of the Jewish community. And then
Yeah.
he played a lot in the Catskills in Florida,
Yeah.
in places where Jewish people were, and they came, they supported him, they loved him, and they were there no matter what.
Right.
They were
and
there.
and he used a lot of Yiddish, which was like a code for them, you know, like a bigazet, and which would be similar to the African American coding of like, I don't know, she had a dream about the King of Sweden. Gosh, now you got an interesting story about she had a dream about the King of Sweden. So one of the lyrics in the song, do you want to tell it?
No, you don't.
No, you tell
I
it.
don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, in one of his songs, Minnie the Moocher, he sings, "She had a dream about the King of Sweden." And that, like so many other things about Cab Calloway, was different. I mean, that's a heavy line, kind of. She had a dream about the King of Sweden. And it starts into this less narrative part of the song. But you used to tell me that you believed that Blanche had actually sung that first, and that he picked it up from her. But I mean, that's, you know, he picked up everything, even though he was credited with calling New York the Big Apple. He was the first one to admit, look, I just heard this stuff, you know what I mean? And I wrote it down. People were making up words and coming up with their own codes the whole time. But, you know, there was this coded language, and I think the other thing that Jewish people really appreciated was the ability to participate. One thing that was different about his style and stuff was he really encouraged, like, I mean, Heidi Ho and stuff like that. And I think if he could have lived to be 200, he would have really tried to get the audience more involved. I don't know how he would have done with karaoke,
Mm-mm.
but he
No,
likes
probably what they now call interactive, or
Yeah, yeah.
sort of the way some kind of the way that Natalie Cole brought her father sort of back to life through the song, and had that virtual image of him,
Right,
or
right.
something. Yeah.
N-
So there's all kinds of possibilities with new tech,
Right.
that he would have probably
Embraced.
used and embraced.
Yeah, he liked gadgets and stuff like that.
Right.
Now you knew him personally. All right, last question. I keep saying that though. So, and I've written some things, about him as an artist and stuff. I didn't know him as well as you did, but I have my own opinion on this answer. But I want to hear what you have to say. What are some things about his personality or him personally that were really outstanding? You know what I mean? That set him apart from other people.
Well, he had a lot of charisma. He drew people to him.
And when he walked in a room,
He
took
was
the
he
air
was sort
out,
of
yeah.
bigger than life type of thing.
Because he was intense.
He was he gave everything he had, really, once he hit the stage.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hold back in any way.
No.
He was kind of a loner. He didn't have a lot of close friends. He wasn't this buddy type of personality. He liked to play cards with some of his friends, but he also liked to just sit in the living room and listen to recordings of himself and of other artists. And he didn't like nightclubbing and that kind of thing too much, but he liked to have drinks at home and have people in and have big family dinners and celebrate his birthday and that kind of thing. So he was a gregarious person on one side, but then on the other side he was kind of a somewhat of a loner, but more or less he wanted his space. He didn't he when he was at home he didn't want people sort of crowded around, because he had that in the theater and in his professional life. So he just wanted space.
Some downtime, yeah.
Some downtime.
Yeah. He was also, talk about him as a businessman or as a professional. I mean, I think in terms of giving his all into everything, he gave his all into everything. If it was horse racing or driving, or he was very focused, you know what I mean?
He
was not distracted at
He
all.
wasn't. He was all right as a businessman. I don't think he was the greatest. He had a manager. He was one of the first that incorporated himself. And
Cab Calloway Inc. I remember he was selling his checks,
and he was very sort of leery. I mean, he was introspective in so far as he questioned. People couldn't come to him with sort of ideas. Give me $100,000 and I'll do this, that, and the other. He wasn't that, no. And he relied on himself a lot, and a very sort of independent, self-reliant type of person. So I just hope that all of this with the city of Baltimore, because Baltimore has had so much trouble and bad publicity and
just tough times, tough times, really tough times.
That if they can hit on some project that maybe can
galvanize the people somehow,
can move things kind of forward in Baltimore.
And inspire
I
other
hope
people
that
to move here. Yeah.
that happens.
And that could actually be the one to do it. All right, let's
Okay.
call it. Thank you so much.